Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are joining us from. Welcome to another episode of the DevOps Insights Forum, the monthly open space for professionals to chat about software development, delivery, reliability. I'm Sam Fell, and today our topic is log love. For Valentine's Day, we decided to bring it back a little old school for everybody and talk about something that we love. We swoon over logs. Modern businesses generate petabytes of machine data in the form of logs and events, which emanate from every part of the technology stack. These logs can give crucial insights into the performance of your applications, infrastructure, and business, assuming you can centrally collect the data, sort through it, and make sense of it. Join our panel as we discuss how log management and analytics supports DevSecOps and other use cases, why collection and backend architecture matters.
We have tech difficulties with Sam here.
Are we having issues with me? Can you not hear me?
We can.
Okay, we're having issues with Bruno, perhaps. The role of real-time analytics and data visualization. So let's go ahead and introduce our panelists. Mitch, I'm going to ask you to go first. You are muted, sir. Wow, this is like Valentine's Day.
That's my fault. That was a user problem there. There we go.
And now your camera is off.
There we go. I think I've got it now. Okay. So I'll start things off. I got all the errors taken care of. Everybody else is good now. I'm Mitch Ashley, principal with Techstrong Research and also CTO at Techstrong Group, who helps put on these events with Sam and Sumo Logic. So great to be here with you and the panel of great folks.
Awesome. Very good. I see everybody adding themselves into the chat already. I think that's fantastic. Mark, welcome. Introduce yourself, please.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Gillette. I am a product manager here at eCentire. We are a managed detection and response company. We are here to help people with their security operations. We are partnered with Sumo Logic to help get that job done.
Awesome. Bruno, just in time. Want to introduce yourself to the folks on the call here?
Sure. Hey, everybody. I think I was having some technical difficulties over there for a second. I'm Bruno. I'm one of the founders of Sumo Logic. I was head of product for about 10 years, and I am now mostly concerned with corporate strategy.
Wonderful. It's great to have you here, Bruno. Kalpesh, welcome.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. My name's Kalpesh Patel. I'm the Director of Infrastructure Services at PagerDuty. I manage the teams that are responsible for the reliability, scalability, and cost effectiveness of our infrastructure solutions, at the same time trying to provide a great internal developer experience.
Wonderful. Wonderful to have you here. And Raj, a repeat visitor. Welcome back.
Well, thank you, Sam. I'm Raj, and I'm looking forward to have a great discussion with this panel. I work at Automation Anywhere. I lead the US cloud operations. I have a long history of logging platforms, supporting them, and scaling the platform. And currently, I helped Automation Anywhere to manage their Sumo partnership and GCP partnership in the technical side. And looking forward to learn from each one of the panel and the audience here. Thank you.
Nice. That's an excellent point that you just made, Raj, is that you're going to learn from the panelists and you're going to learn from the audience. So I already see a ton of people jumping into the chat. So it seems like we might have some repeat visitors, which is wonderful. Welcome back. We're really happy to have you here. For those that are new, dump where you're from in the chat. Let us know. Say hello. Ask questions. These people here who are in front of you that are experts in their fields, doing it for multiple different companies as an MDR or for two very large successful companies, they're here for you. So ask questions. Be respectful or we'll just kick you out of the event. There won't be a lot of fuss. You won't be missed. And if there's any feedback that you have for how to make us do these better, we would love to hear that as well. We're trying to continuously improve. That's the motto. And so as part of this, we always have our friends over at the DevOps.com, Techstrong, do a panel poll for us. And so we have some information around log analytics and log management, that we've queried the entire universe of people, at least the universe of people who come to DevOps.com, which is probably most of the universe, to ask them their opinion. We're going to ask these questions of you, and then we're going to see how the opinions sort of line up. So our first question for everybody in the audience: currently our log management solution is non-existent. We fail to derive value from logs. A free-for-all, everyone does their own thing. An enterprise work in progress, we are standardizing and operationalizing log management. Or you've arrived, you're nirvana, we are getting value from log data. So where are you in your process? And let's give everybody a second. All right. So I'm having a hard time seeing all of the answers. There we go. So it looks like most people out there, the majority of people, are a work in progress, which makes sense to me, because even if you've got everything being looked at, there's going to be more new things that are going to pop up. And so it should kind of always be a work in progress. Very sad to see 11% not deriving value from the logs. I guess my network may be a little laggy too. Apologies if I'm stuttering. Everyone does their own thing, 26%. That's not surprising. And it's wonderful to see 10%. Any other folks have questions or comments on the data that we just saw there? Let's go to where the other data was. This is what DevOps.com folks said, and they kind of agreed, right? The work in progress, a bit smaller. Yeah, my network seems to be really glitchy right now. Apologies, folks. Hopefully it's not coming through too bad. But interesting, right? Non-existent, fail to derive value from logs, 23% of people, which is a lot. And there's a ton of data there for them to take advantage of. Anybody else have any thoughts, comments on this?
The broader audience was saying that they're sort of non-existent category, but we're talking to a much wider population. So some folks are still struggling with maybe getting started too, right? I get that. It's not an easy problem to tackle.
I think they're doing it in different form. Most likely, it's not that they don't have a log management. They may be having they are doing it in the command line or something. So still they're doing the work. It's just that in a different form, manual form, not an aggregated form. That's what my understanding with that data looks like.
I would guess, unless you're talking about a restaurant, somebody's doing something with logs. Well, maybe even in a restaurant, if you're doing wood-fired pizza or something, right? You need some logs to make that fire.
Too much Valentine's Day candy for Bruno, I think.
Okay, so all right, next polling question, please, Cody. So next one, currently our log management solution is homegrown or none, open source, commercial on-premise, or commercial cloud-based. Are you using? And let's see what the survey says. All right. Commercial cloud-based software. So a large percentage of folks are choosing cloud-based scalable services that they don't have to worry about. The on-premise is hard because you got to manage the infrastructure. The open source is harder because you got to manage the infrastructure and the software.
Wow, do I have follow-up questions for this one if this is what it ends up being? was going to say what section of audience did we manage to attract here today?
The ones that think that commercial cloud-based services are valuable. So same as the folks who are on the panel, I guess. That's good. All right, let's see how the unwashed masses. We have a very select group that have decided to show up to our event this morning. What does everyone on DevOps.com think? Let's see what they said.
Yep, that's what I would have expected. So much.
Interesting. That's quite a big switch where homegrown and open source now are the predominant ones. Commercial on-premise is smaller than I would have expected it to be.
Yeah, same here. I would have expected the last two to be reversed, honestly, but probably we've got some bias in the DevOps.com's audience in terms of who comes to visit.
Yeah. Well, as we're going through this, folks in the audience here, folks in the chat, be thinking about why you answered the way you did and where you'd want to be, right? Where is it that you'd like to be as you're doing this?
Maybe the answer of our audience was aspirational.
Potentially.
Yeah. Potentially.
All right. Next question. We use log management to help us understand what's the one that you use the most. Reliability and performance, security and threat, compliance, or business trends. So which one is the predominant one, unless they can answer multiple?
It's one on this one, yeah.
Yeah, it's just the most use case. Performance, security, business, compliance, system and performance. Okay. Here we go with some compliance. Yep. Good. Glad to see security popping up. Good. Steve, Sanmi, welcome. Thanks for jumping in the chat. Miguel, Ari. Wow, a lot of people. Got folks from Utah, from Colorado, from California, Boston, Dallas. Did I switch slides? I didn't mean to do that.
That's okay. I think we're okay.
Oh, okay. All right. Did we get the answers back, Cody? Oh, we did. But then they disappeared. There they are.
There we go.
All right. So system reliability and performance seems like it's the winner, right? That's what most people are using it for. System security and threat exposure is climbing, which is great. Compliance and business trends. So we'll talk a little bit about that, I think, during this event.
This makes sense to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense to me. This makes more sense, but I would say that compliance use case typically is a very it's big by spend but small by number of users.
Good point. Yeah.
And given the single choice nature of this, compliance is rarely the first reason you're doing this. So it might be everybody's secondary reason.
Yeah, and just the fact that you have the logs becomes
unless you're GC or somebody. Somebody in that part of the house.
Yeah, we didn't do select more than one because everybody would select all of them.
Yeah,
probably. You're probably
not meaningful.
Yeah,
you're probably right. Yeah. So
in the chat,
in the chat, let us know if you would have selected more than one if you had had the chance. And then our final poll question: as we move to the cloud, logs become more important, equally important, or less important? So I'm going to go ahead and submit my answer. Please go ahead and submit yours. This is your opinion. This is not. I'm not going to hold you to this, although we will talk about it.
What do you mean we're not going to hold anybody? I'm taking screenshots over here.
There you go. I'm going to shame people. Public shaming. As we move to the cloud, logs become more important, equally important, or less important. Okay. So we have a small contingent that believe that they are less important. It's okay. Equally important.
I have a follow-up.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know why.
This mirrors the general population. So congratulations, local population. You're representative of the whole, which is nice. That feels good. This is not surprising to me to see the trend the way it is. It's surprising to see these as high as they are. But that's okay. That's why we're here. We're here to talk about that. So let's do that. So let's talk about it. We want, again, it's Valentine's Day. So we hope everyone's out there having a fantastic Valentine's Day. Right before this event, literally just in time, we changed everything up. So if there are errors in my code, please forgive me, but we were trying to make this fun. So the question that I have for the panelists and for the folks in the chat, what are some of the challenges that you've experienced in log management? And this was sort of written in the form of a Valentine's Day candy. Challenges to log management. What are some? And I'm going to start with Mark. Mark, I'm going to ask you to start with this one.
Well, there's a lot of challenges. I won't take everybody's answers. I think it's the volume. Is everything logs in different ways, some better than others, a lot worse than others. Finding your logs and getting your logs and making use of them is a huge challenge. It's a huge volume, and just the management part of log management is extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that eSentire does is to help with all that as a service provider. So even you're taking a SaaS-based product and you're providing services on top of that platform, so your customers don't even have to worry about that aspect of it.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes, we will build the Sumo for people, and we will do all the work. But we have quite a few customers who have tried to do it on their own, and they've seen that challenge, and they've called us in to take over that for them and make that problem go away.
Right. Nice. Okay. So in addition to sort of the volume challenge, let's see, Kalpesh, what are some of the other challenges that you've seen people run into with good log management?
I think volume is definitely a big one. I would say the other challenge that I've seen is just what to log, having some sort of standard in terms of how you log, what types of information you log, the attributes you use. The end goal is to make it easier for the folks that are consuming this information to be able to go from just overall metrics to digging into like specific areas and tracing. And so you want the information that you store to be able to help manage that story. And I find that a lot of times organizations, as they're on this path to maturity, they're not sure what to log. There's a lot of wasted logs. There's a huge cost in terms of managing those logs. And so until they get down to that core, how to tell that story on the back end and make the information useful to the folks that are consuming this information, it can be a challenge to know what to log and how to log it.
I think that's like a really, really excellent point, because that feeds back into the first problem that Mark mentioned. If you're capturing everything, that's wonderful, but that's also pretty voluminous. If you're not capturing everything, then the thing that you're not capturing is going to be the thing that you'll end up needing. And so managing that and understanding those different data sources and the value of the data that comes out of it, and the value of that data in relation to the value of the other data that you have, starts to become interesting. And there are a ton of permutations involved in trying to figure that out. So I love that. I think that's an excellent point, Kalpesh. Raj, what are your thoughts on this? What are some of the challenges that you've seen people approach with log management?
Sure. Developers love to log. That's a standard thing. The question is what metrics to derive out of that log, what information. It's primarily the noise, right? We see a ton of noise, and how do we arrive at a signal? I've already highlighted this before. Previously, it used to be a hay in a haystack, like a needle in a haystack. Now it's needle in a needle stack. So that's the direction we are headed. So we need to start thinking about intelligent dashboards, etc. How to proactively. So the velocity of developers is going so fast, and how do we build dashboards to support them? So training them across the organization is going to be a challenge, but because of the simplicity of Sumo or other vendors, it helps us to increase the coverage from not just from operations, it goes all the way to customer success. So how do we transform to make meaningful decisions? Like, for example, if you are looking at the product usage, whatever you have not looked into the product analytics, now you can see it in the logs and measure them and try to have a meaningful conversation during the upsell opportunity. So we look at it in a different way, not just analysis, troubleshooting, but more in the business side of it, from a sales side of it as well.
Interesting. So you're really taking a broad look at the data stored in those logs. You're pulling out security information, performance information, business information out of the same set of source data Mark was just talking about was so voluminous. You've gotten to the point where you've sort of leaned in and optimized how you look at that, the lens that you're putting on that data, and it's providing you that value across the different security, performance, and business, which is fantastic.
And the challenge associated with that is the cost of managing this ingestion and retrieval. I think that's a continuous and the data retention, right? Like if you want to keep 30 days, 90 days, a year, 5 years, right? So for the compliance needs, so you need to be really careful on how you instrument. The instrumentation of data becomes very important. So that's where I think a lot of folks struggle.
Yep. Knowing what to capture, what to instrument, what deserves a debug log line, right? What deserves an error log line.
Yeah.
And having that conversation with the developers, with the engineering team, and having some agreement with that, I think is an important thing. Having some standardization around the names, all very good things. Raj, thank you for bringing that up. Let's say, Bruno, what are some of the things that you find challenging around log management?
Lots of challenges were covered, but I would say that a lot of challenges with log management are emotional, more so than actually technical. I think there is as we kind of move into the digital business model, every company's transforming, the software is literally eating the world, right? All of that is true. There is no industry out there that's not building products that are digital in nature, which means we're making machines run our lives. And I don't mean in a Skynet kind of a world, right? But everything we do today has some kind of an IP compute component of it. And Automation Anywhere guys really know about that, right? But like, if you think about what that means that, logs are not just quote unquote what we used to think of logs, right? Which is, I'll use it for compliance or I'll use it for troubleshooting. They are essentially the exhaust of our business. And without understanding that basically it is possibly the most important data set that our business emits, without capturing it, understanding what the value brings, finding ways of coping with it, we will miss an opportunity. I think there's a lot of mindset that is not yet settled in, because as we move to digital, as we move to the cloud, companies are coping with the fact, like, I'm generating petabytes of logs. What do I do with this stuff? Why is it costing me so much, right? It's not. You're running your business off of this stuff, and you're going to improve how you run your business if you do it right. And, I'll also comment on Kalpash's and Raj's comment about the complexity of log, like what's inside a log. Like, I don't think we will ever be able to sort of govern what's in a log, because we have to remember that a log is generated by a developer for their own purposes. It is not generated so that we can capture it later on in a log management system and do some stuff. Developers put logs into their code in order to to figure out whether their code works way before it goes to production, right? And they're constantly evaluating what's in it. They're looking at, like, is this transaction working? Is this code, doing what I'm expecting it to do? And then the secondary purpose of the log line is that they will go back to that log when something breaks in production. But that's the secondary purpose, which means that, unless you're going to tell the developer how to debug their code and govern how that's done, we just need to give up on the sort of the desire that we will control what's in it, which means that the tooling that we use to capture logs and understand what the logs are and carrying forward, what value they have, how to extract it, has to be smart enough and capable enough to determine, like Raj used the words intelligent dashboards. Like, I would say there's, that's one aspect of it, right? But the other aspects are, ability to determine what's the schema in an unstructured log line, what's the value in it, like detecting patterns, detecting outliers, anomalies, without knowing what's inside the payload of logs before you collect it, right? So I know I'm going on and on here, right? But I think,
well, there are a lot of challenges apparently.
Those are some of the challenges I think that enterprises will cope with, but there's so much opportunity. It's kind of insane how much value there is there to be mined out of this data set, and I don't think we can run our businesses without it.
Right. Mitch, you have an interesting comment in the chat there. Want to share more?
Well, there's so much been said. I think the one thing I want to add, I put a little quip in there about 500 video channels, but nothing to watch, right? You're not sure what to look at. That's always a challenge. I think one of the things that we're seeking to gain through telemetry data coming out of our systems, log data, at whatever quality, whatever fidelity, that, as Bruno and others have mentioned, I think we're looking for context, right? And sometimes it's really difficult to understand what these messages mean versus what these messages mean, and is there some correlation that I can draw between those to extract either business value or diagnostics or performance or whatever it might be. So I think that's one of the most beneficial things that we can gain beyond just log aggregation is bringing the analytics to it to help us understand what this means and then how we can act upon it or inform decisions from it.
Yep. You mentioned the TV channels. There was a song, I'm putting it in the chat, back in 1992. There was a song called 57 Channels and Nothing On.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine that there was a time where we only had 57 channels?
But we all only watch 4 channels. So, but
at one point, right? But I don't think anybody else on this on the panel or anyone else listening in was around for that. So that's awesome.
You might have some people saying what you might get the question from some people. What's a channel?
It's a channel. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Good comments also from the chat. Thank you. Keep it up. Tips and tricks for effective logging and leveraging those logs for reliability and security use cases. What are some things that you've done that have worked out well for you? And I'm going to start this time. I'll start with Kalpesh.
Yeah, I definitely think there's some overlap between my answer to this question and the previous question, because tips and tricks to effective logging are to make sure that you have the right logging information. That makes it easier to troubleshoot. And definitely take Bruno's point that developers want to log what they want to log for debugging purposes. I think there are opportunities as part of the golden path of any organization to build in some basic attributes that are going to help with troubleshooting, help with tracing information. So all these things go along with reliability and security. You could set up policy. I think some of this also comes down to not just logging, but what you do with those logs and what kinds of logic you have built into your platform, or what kinds of integrations you have into other tools that are going to help monitor your metrics and make sure that you have the right practices around setting up service level objectives and measuring your SLIs, and also auditing and making sure that you're on top of what kinds of access folks have, what kinds of things folks are doing within your platform. So I think logging is a big part of that, but I think it also depends on how you use those logs, what integrations you have, what tooling you have in place to be able to monitor and make sure that you're getting the best reliability, measuring it, and to make sure that your platform is secure.
Nice. Yeah, that all makes sense. Your the volume of data that comes in, you're probably working with other team members, other folks on other teams to try and say which data needs to come in, because there are probably new data sources popping up all the time. And so do you have any sort of, do you have a process? What does it look like for you to bring new data in? Is there like a process that you take, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a challenge because part of it is new features and new modules. Part of it is just personnel, right? Like folks enter an organization, leave an organization, and to have that knowledge base where you have to have a good developer platform, you have to have good documentation, you have to have good internal tooling. Those are all things that can help kind of take some of that knowledge. Whatever you can do to reduce the cognitive load on your engineers, I think is going to be helpful. So yeah, just making sure they have access to the right tools, the right documentation, that you have a good training program in place, and try and standardize where possible. But it is trying to herd cats. So there's a lot of information. You do need dedicated. I feel dedicated teams that are managing the infrastructure associated with your logging platform. Making sure that you're tiering data in the right way and that you're archiving data in the right way. So there's, it takes a village. There's a lot of different teams involved in managing the infrastructure, managing the information, and getting the best value out of it.
And I like the way you couched all that as trying to just create a great developer experience, making sure the collaboration is there, making sure they're comfortable in their seats, so that she or he can be productive. I think that's a wonderful way of thinking about this. Back to what Bruno said earlier, the developers are the ones who write the log lines, and they're trying to get their code to just run at first, and then over time you want to lean it out and optimize it. They didn't realize that log line was going to be called 50 million times an hour. So you have to figure out how do you manage that and lean that out. I think that's great. Thank you, Kalpesh. Let's see, Mitch, what are your thoughts here? Tips and tricks.
I think there's a lot of good kind of heuristics learnings from having done this for a number of years for all of us. I think one of the things that I'm really encouraged about is leveraging new expertise to help inform us of how to do better analytics, better logging, et cetera. So roles like SRE, who is interested in reliability and performance. So as well as, operations has obviously been interested in that too, but we have some people specializing in some of those areas. They need certain kinds of information and analytics. And that was number one on our list of the what are the top 4 use cases. That and security were second. So I think also security is another group to work with. So I think we can help inform ourselves, whether it's what the developers putting in, kind of analytics that we're using, data that we're collecting. There's more than one audience. There's more than just kind of the triage and something's down, we got to fix it, break fix. And that's encouraging that we can help build that data that's useful to several audiences.
Mm-hmm. And that's maybe a fantastic segue to Mark, right? Tips and tricks for effective logging. You're walking into people's organizations all the time and trying to help them understand this. Maybe they already have a solution, maybe they don't, maybe they're using it well, maybe they're not, but they want help. And you come in with, I'm sure you've got a little playbook. What are some of the tips and tricks that you tell your clients when they're going on this journey?
Well, I think you nailed it there. It is a journey. Unfortunately, you're never done. It's the continuous improvement, right? There's always going to be another log. In the case of security, as we're investigating a breach or a threat, as we're pulling the thread and chasing the bad guy down and looking for the evidence for the breach, we always find some corner of the network where things aren't logging properly, and we lose the trail. Like the Duke boys get over the county line and we can't chase them. That's a reference going back a ways.
That's awesome.
So we tell our clients, unfortunately, like we're not going to come in here and we're not going to do work for 2 weeks or 2 months and then we're all done. We're good here. You have to have a plan for continuous improvement. There's always another log. There's always another system. There's always another network. So be ready to always be improving.
All right. And you're pulling those logs in mostly for security use cases, not a lot of performance sort of lens on the data, right?
Yeah, they're all good logs, but yes, from a security perspective, we definitely have a point of view, and we kind of have a hierarchy. Some things have higher fidelity, give us more information. We want to start there, get the important stuff in first, and then over time we can pull in more and more because it's all good evidence. And as the attackers get more sophisticated, the more obscure things which would have been obscure logs years ago, we're finding are helping contribute to our investigations.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. Who do I want to go to next? Bruno, I'm going to go to you next. What are your thoughts on this?
Lots of different things, and I'm curious to hear what Raj has to say to this. But
we can go to Raj next, if you rather.
All right, let's do that.
The gentleman yields the floor. Raj, you're up.
Sure. First is I'll go the tips on the cloud operations side before I comment on mine. Really great inputs from the panel so far. One of the things I do is I budget time for every release for our cloud operations to debug logs, because we know the scale is going to go. How do we manage the budget? So we continuously monitor, and every environment rollout, we have alerts, etc. So that's the cloud operations side. So we fix it in the early stages before it gets rolled out to our enterprise edition. So we catch the problems in the sandbox environment. So that's one. Second is we have different folder structure where we pre-built dashboards. So that way, that will help the organization, like whether it's a security or we have different structures like AWS, GCP, etc. Then we have the different, so we can narrow down whatever we want to analyze really quick and fast. And then third is basically we restrict certain logs. Like for example, security logs, we don't expose that to wider business. It's only for security team, and only limited cloud operations folks have access to that. Then fourth is there was one use case where we were doing infrequent scan heavily. So we kick the users out and have a standard wiki page. They are still abusing it, so we kick them out. Until you read it, you are not getting the access back. It's like a brutal force method. It's not the best method, but since we don't have the guardrails, so we do certain things in the process side to help streamline our things. This is more from the budgeting and governance side. And from a troubleshooting wise, I think we have like a system troubleshooter. Like whenever we get an on call, like what is a quick dashboard, really like the different things we want to analyze, so that way the on-call engineer gets things done quickly in terms of triaging and improving the MTTR. So that's at a quick rundown of what are the tips and tricks. I'll hand it over to Bruno.
Nice. I love that.
All right.
So Bruno, hopefully that had helped to inform your question. We also have somebody in the chat, Steve, has asked a little bit about standards, which I think is another important part of this.
Yeah, definitely. Let me look at that. Yeah, I think that we actually have a question that we're going to talk about that later on in the panel. So I'll leave that for then. But tips and tricks, like there's tons of tips and tricks. You won't be able to really force developers to do conform to a schema or anything like that. Pick a standard, pick some kind of a logging methodology, key value pairs, JSON, something that will be a corporate standard. Maybe build a logging library, right? That your developers will use to log effectively, right? We've evolved our own. We're a log management platform, but we've actually built our own logging library for our own purposes, which has become actually pretty sophisticated. We can turn on flags that govern how the logs are treated and managed and routed in production without touching the code. We don't have to push any code to production to make major changes to how we log. So basically, thinking about logging in terms of facility for developers to leverage common facilities that give you flexibility, give you governability, give you sort of visibility, give you routability, and all of that stuff will probably pay big dividends in the future, rather than just having people log their own stuff, right? Let them log their own stuff, the information they want to log, but perhaps encourage them to use libraries that you've developed and things like that. And developers are okay with that, right? You can ask a developer to use an API or a module or whatever. It's really hard to tell a developer, hey, why don't you log this piece of info every time you log, right? So you pick your battles, and we found that with our log, and you actually want to let developers log whatever they need to log, right? Because that's how they then get value out of those logs. So we found that be very, very useful on our end.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I love that. Again, this all keeps coming back to the developers, which I love that we're doing that, because they're feeling their way. She's trying to get her way through the code and make sure the logic works. In the beginning, those log lines are really useful to help her do that. And when it's in production, it can be helpful to try and spot other problems as well. So that's really good. We covered everybody on this question. We'll move on to the next one, unless anyone has anything else to add. All right.
I'm going to throw one thing in real quick.
Please.
There's something called observability-driven design, which is developers thinking about the telemetry, the data that will help them when they're using an observability, log management, et cetera, system. And I heard someone describe it as, try to write your logging so that when you're debugging something, you don't have to add more code to figure out what it's doing. Right. So we're not adding code in production or code in test. We have the telemetry for most of the cases we're going to find. I think that's a great kind of philosophy that's catching on with folks, with developers. Yeah. To speak to your point, Bruno, about influencing developers, how are helping them with what kinds of things will help in production.
Yeah. And I love the Bruno's sort of talk track about our ability. I didn't know this, but our ability are on our systems where we have a live SaaS service that's serving hundreds of thousands of folks, and we can turn on a switch and get more telemetry that just shows on. It's like turning the lights on in the room. Just really smart. And you'd think a company that was good at log analytics and log management would have something like that, but it's good. And this tells you that it's not just about the back end. It's also about your thought, your thinking, your strategy and thinking process, the architecture. So good point, Mitch. I appreciate you bringing that up. So what does open telemetry mean for the future of log management and analytics? Everyone's heard of open telemetry, I'm sure. If you haven't, you can look it up. Very interesting open source project that helps standardize collection. So let's see. I'm going to ask Raj to go first this time.
Sure. Today we are using Fluentd. We are continuously evaluating how to migrate from Fluentd to OpenTelemetry. So there are a lot of challenges we see in the Fluentd side, like in terms of the volume of data we are ingesting, and the direction is OpenTelemetry, but we are not there yet, but we will get there. That's the as the Sumo is aligned. If you look at the Kubernetes collection, with 3.0, it's only OpenTelemetry. There is no other way out. Yeah, that's a quick rundown of. And in terms of log management, I believe we can get richer in terms of metrics, etc. Yeah,
so more of the telemetry from one.
So for me, it's still I'm in the learning stage on the OpenTelemetry. I would like to learn from the panel here.
Awesome. All right, I appreciate that. Then I shouldn't have asked you to go first, Raj. I apologize. Yeah, we're all friendly. It's not a problem. I will ask. Let's see. Do I see anyone who's leaning in? Mark, you look like you're leaning in. What does open telemetry mean to your business?
It's just easier ways to get more log data. To that point I made earlier, we want more log data. We can't protect what we can't see, and the challenge sometimes is just the physics of moving the log data to the platform. So this is a open, easier, more portable way of just getting the right data out and getting it to the Sumo platform so we can do our jobs. If it doesn't get there, then this whole conversation becomes moot, at least from my company's perspective. So it helps us get that data there.
And do you have, because as you said, you have sort of an opinion when you go in to do implementations and say, hey, we want to collect the log information. Are you putting that open telemetry nugget out there for customers and saying, here's the direction we think you should go? Or how does that work?
We're kind of in the same boat that Raj mentioned. We're in the process of evolving that. That's not our standard yet. We'd like to get there. We kind of take a by any means necessary path right now, but I like the OT option. I think will allow us to standardize, and we could lead with that. That's the first option. It's the most open. It's the most flexible, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fine. We're all on a journey, and it's great to learn new things. We try and make ourselves the sort of the easiest place for people to learn about and play with open telemetry. We're really committed to it, so we're happy to hear that you're checking it out. That's really cool. All right, let's see. I will go to Bruno. I'm going to go to you, so I won't go to you last this time.
All right. Look, I think open telemetry, standards are great whenever there's chaos, something emerges to try to manage the chaos. I think where we got in terms of what this is going to help the industry is standardize the collection. I think, the agentry sprawl, it's going to make enterprises not have to switch out infrastructure components like agents and other things every time they need to switch a tool or route data to a different technology or a vendor or open source project or whatever it is. I think that's ultimately what this is going to do. It might help a little bit on standardizing certain types of log lines that are common. Maybe we'll get some level of tagging that'll become common and slowly adopted across the industry. We're involved in this, as you can imagine. Christian Wiegen, a co-founder, is heavily involved in the logging aspect of open telemetry, and he probably knows more about logs than anybody in the world. But basically, I think it's going to help primarily with sort of that layer of infrastructure that's involved in getting logs, and possibly a little bit on kind of what the logs are structured as and how they might be tagged. It's not gonna, we're not gonna start all of a sudden getting a schema for logs or anything like that. Nobody should want that, number one, and number two, it's impossible. And so that's kind of how I think about this.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. In the chat there, if anybody has heard of open telemetry, let us know. If you're playing with it, let us know. If you're strategically moving towards it, let us know. Be interesting for us to figure that out, just to have that as some reference. Thank you, Bruno. All right, let's see. Kalpesh, what are your thoughts on open telemetry?
I think the panel has done a great job of kind of covering the basics, the thoughts around open telemetry. We talked about standards. Obviously, standardization is important. That it's nice to have a standard that takes into consideration how these logs are going to be used in some of the use cases. I think one of the questions that organizations have to ask themselves is how much of their value proposition is around leveraging some of these open source capabilities versus using some sort of enterprise platform, because that's always a consideration. Like, you have limited time, you have limited resources, you kind of want to integrate with a platform that does a lot of things for you and guides you in the direction that you want to go, and hopefully the tooling you're using takes advantage of standards like open telemetry. But how much of that do you want to have in-house and build yourself and maintain and support yourself? So I think that will be a consideration as well.
And you mentioned this earlier, Kalpesh. You talked about making sure that your teams could onboard quickly and that there was sort of standard harness for them to fit into. And if one of your developers shows up and she already knows open telemetry, boom, slam dunk, right? It's a lot more likely that she's going to know an open standard like open telemetry than some proprietary thing. Luckily, ChatGPT, you could just have ChatGPT do the configuration file for you, which I've started to see now, which is like pretty crazy. But the open standards, I think, really helps. All right, Mitch, bring us home on this question.
Well, if you look at it from an industry perspective, I think it's one of the most fascinating open source projects because I think you could claim it's probably had more, not only contributions, but technology suppliers. And Sumo has been from the beginning really one of the major players in open telemetry to stave off doing things in a proprietary way and instead adopting some of that open source software. And where that's happened is yes, in agents, but I think even more importantly is that data transformation. There is a data model for how data is ingested and then consumed from systems, devices, applications, etc. And that helps address part of that context problem I was talking about before. Well, when you say this, what does that mean compared to what this application says when it uses that same field or attribute? So that's one part of it I think is extremely valuable. Another that we haven't talked about yet is open tracing, another open source project that was part of the CNCF. Was folded into open telemetry, and open tracing is around APIs and SDKs to help particularly cloud native microservices, service mesh, things like that, to make to help that be kind of easier to diagnose, understand what's happening in an environment where you have hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of microservices operating across a cloud or clouds, whatever, pretty complex environments.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Some fantastic things in it, and I applaud Sumo and others for being strong, making some significant contributions for the industry, but also benefiting their customers through that. And one third point is we have done some surveys around this, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but organizations are not only requiring it or moving to requiring it as part of technologies that they adopt, but they're also starting to use open telemetry in their own applications, not just in the observability platforms that they use. So it's on the adoption curve. It's moving pretty quickly.
And just to be clear, open telemetry, I think, is far more mature in sort of, it started in the tracing world, APM world, but it's moved into the structured metrics monitoring world that is only now starting to make progress into the logging world. And so, we are asking the question specifically about logging, and obviously that's going to be the least mature and probably least adopted because there's not a whole lot out there yet.
One point to add is, I think when I looked at a very high level, is the open telemetry is continued being developed with a lot of telemetry libraries. So it is being supporting. So that's the direction people are heading towards. So that way, it doesn't matter what's your platform, you have the corresponding libraries which will help the developers to ingest the logs in a standard way. That's
standard libraries to allow you to instrument all sorts of different things, from metrics to traces across different languages, right? PHP, Java, C, .NET, well, all the different stuff, right? And so there are libraries that the open source community is creating and that other vendors are helping to contribute to help accelerate that process so that people get all the visibility. Again, they can turn the lights on inside of these applications without having to do a whole bunch of changes themselves, which is pretty amazing. And it's also open so that the data that gets funneled out the back end doesn't have to go to one vendor. It can go to all the vendors. And then you can understand which analytics engine is better. You're not basing it based on just the analytics, the collection, which I think is really great. We have 7 minutes left. We have one question to talk about. I want to make sure that we give everybody a time to sort of answer. So before we get into the question and answer, I want to let everybody in the audience know, first, we appreciate them being here. We appreciate their joining in the chat, especially those of you who had real comments and questions in the chat. Thank you. We have 4 Amazon gift card winners: Josh L., Elizabeth V., Yogesh B., and RES will be contacted after this. So just know that. And let's finish up now with this last question. How are logs relevant beyond reliability and security? And so I'm going to start with, who haven't I started with yet? Bruno, I have not started with you. So let's talk about that.
Oh my goodness! Like I said, should I just repeat my the answer up front?
No, you don't have to repeat it. You can just say what I
I'm
said
just
before,
kidding.
and then we'll move on because we're 6 minutes.
No, I'm just kidding. It's the data that is you cannot run your business. Our finance team runs queries and logs to figure out what unit economics we're getting to produce our gross margin reports. Our customer support team uses it. Our sales team is looking at dashboards in terms of how our customers engaging with our platform. You name it, right? This is extremely business relevant piece of payload of data that if the application is the interface to the customer, the application communicates to the business through logs. It's as simple as that.
And even for things that if the application actually does communicate to the business with APIs, there's still going to be some stuff in the logs that they didn't think about that they're going to want to collect, right?
Tons of stuff.
Tons of stuff.
Much easier to get a log line on the dashboard than to write code to integrate to an API and hire a bunch of analysts and what have you. Right?
That's right. All right. So let's see, Raj, let's get you in there. How are you all thinking about using logs beyond security and reliability?
Sure. So I think it at a very high level, like how I can do my job. Like it doesn't matter whether I am a support or I am a CSM or I am a finance or cloud operations or a developer. So logs is for all. The question is, what information are you deriving at it? Whether you're doing a product feature, like typically ingesting product analytics is going to take some time. Logging is the easiest, cheapest, and dirtiest way to find out the usage of the product. So that's a simplest one I can say. And then secondly, we have like a analytics done on a monthly basis, etc. So where we can look at business updates, and we can also do what we do is we use developers to ingest the logs, and then from here we feed to the data warehouse and analytics teams to build dashboards as well. Like we don't look at just here. So this is like a free flow of logs. So we built solutions around it wherever we don't have the direct data stuff. So
you're pulling in other data, or you're pulling our data, Sumo data, out to put near other data to be able to analyze the whole thing.
Yeah, and other things we are really, really powerfully using is we monitor the system. Anytime we see a log line, we trigger an alert. It can be a certain pattern, it can be anything. And in some cases, we even do auto remediation as well. We use Shoreline to do the auto remediation as well.
Yep.
So we have done like monitoring, alerting, remediation, etc. So and business analytics, etc., and forensic security analytics. And like say, sometimes someone is typing password incorrectly multiple times. We also have a log line which will alert as well. I'm just giving this as an example.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Across lots of different domains.
We don't use one cookie cutter. We ingest the logs and then we derive information around it.
Nice.
All
right. I want to get to, let's move to Kalpesh.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I know we only have like 2 minutes, but a lot of times when you think about logs, you think about observability, but I think you can also leverage logs for setting up policies and then taking actions off the back of those policies. So along the lines of what Raj said around automation of some actions based on the information that you're getting. So I think that's very exciting as well.
Very nice. And Mark?
I don't know. I've been doing cybersecurity continuously for 23 years now. I don't think there's anything beyond security, to be totally honest. But something that we're doing a lot of work with our logs. We have data scientists, and we're doing behavior analytics, trending, and whatnot. So this is still a security corner use case, but we like to model what normal behavior is based on the logs that we have. That way, from a security perspective, we can say when something's not normal.
And when you say normal, you mean performance, transactions, volume of transactions, that sort of thing?
No, for us, actually, more it's the weak link in cybersecurity is the user, right? If it weren't for the users, we could secure these systems much easier. So we like to model user behaviors. Raj mentioned it briefly, like, how often, how many times is a bad password is malicious password spraying versus it's Monday morning and my coffee hasn't kicked in. So modeling those behaviors, tracking those failed password attempts, logins, lateral movement through the network, good bad guys try to not trip over the blatant alarms. So you have to see weird behaviors. The finance team computers should never be talking to the code repo. That's
right.
Track the users, know what's normal, and then flag those outliers. And then we put that in front of our SOC, our smart cybersecurity analysts. And their job is to then pull that thread, do more queries, ask more questions, and see if it's a legit problem or not.
Right. I love it. Thank you for that, Mark. All right, Mitch, we are at 9 o'clock. Bring us home.
Quick. I'm excited about the both customer experience and the business metrics that we're getting out of our systems, out of our log data, et cetera. That's fantastic. I mean, you need to be able to point to how your work impacts our customers and our business. There you go. There's one way.
Awesome. Well, I thank the panelists. I thank the audience. I thank the audience members that are still here, and the ones that come back every month. Thank you. Yeah, this is perfect. Thank you very much. Log love. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.